I've brought up the legendary status of Romero's works many times, the godfather of the modern-day representation of the zombie. When I bring up George A. Romero, I tend to discuss his works, from 1968's Night of the Living Dead, 1978's Dawn, 1985's Day, and 2005's Land of the Dead, all a steady flow of different but wholeheartedly memorable films representing their own facet of the human condition and the undead's gradual transformation. However, after Land of the Dead, things seem to take a different turn. Two movies in George A. Romero's Dead library are largely forgotten or considered to be his worst. They generally don't come up too frequently in discussion: 2007's Diary of the Dead and 2009's Survival of the Dead. Originally, I was going to cover both for one video, but I figured there was a lot to sink my teeth into with the zombie mockumentary. So today we are discussing Diary of the Dead, Romero's forgotten reboot. While each installment by the Godfather of the Dead usually had a 10 to 20 year gap to really flesh out the narrative, practical effects, and themes, Diary and Survival of the Dead both came within 2 years of each other right after Land, with a more grounded and widely different direction. Romero wanted to make a film that wasn't large in scope, to go back to their root, with a more low-budget experience like Night of the Living Dead. He wanted to dip his hands into what he considered emerging media and display the perspective of people with cameras, since recording technology was much more accessible than it was when he started directing 40 years prior. This focus on emerging media and how it shapes a general public birthed the central plot for Diary of the Dead.
The commentary I was trying to make is that we're becoming victims of this media society, not mainstream media. You know, in the old days there were 3 networks, and maybe they were lying to us, or maybe they were spinning or twisting things. Now, everybody's a reporter, you know, it's blogs, there's, you know, everybody's shooting for, you know, anything that happens, and the whole world is a camera. So that's what it's about. It's about sort of the dangers of that and to not be obsessed by that.
It seemed to ride the found footage trend that had gained popularity since the Blair Witch Project and Cloverfield, although Romero had no idea movies like Cloverfield existed. He even considered the Blair Witch Project to be way too shaky and dizzying, with a plot that made no sense.
It ain't Blair Witch at all. It's much more theatrical than that.
He was not inspired by other movies like those. He literally just thought the use of cameras in film was a neat idea for a zombie flick and wanted that to be a central theme on louder media noise. A student film to show the direct truth of the harsh realities of the zombie outbreak without the filters of the media or sensitive people. At first, his own interpretation of the medium seemed like it would work well, but it was an entirely different process than a traditionally filmed movie. Making a film look like it was live recorded meant scenes had to be shot in continuous long takes frequently. The shift from multiple angle shots was a long shot from what he was used to. It was a different experience that needed to be condensed. It was less a found footage film and more a mockumentary chronicling the beginning of the zombie outbreak through the lens of film students. Having their perspective would lend to a more semi-professional way of using a subjective camera to explain its shaky recordings, where other found footage movies just have regular people recording like professionals. Looking at you, M. Night Shyamalan's The Visit. However, Romero still hired a cinematographer to do all the camera work instead of relying on the actors to do the filming themselves. It also explains why the film was spliced together and narrated over to give it that mockumentary vibe. Unlike popular found footage films of the era, this film still sought structure to their point of view and camera usage, for the most part. Diary of the Dead is also a total reboot of the series, basically to have the time period make sense. An outbreak that started in 1968 lasting until 2005 left a lot of plot holes that covered 4 separate decades of culture that would have more questions rising as the years went on.
And I made 4 films that trace the history this way. And this starts on the very first night again. It sort of goes back to the very first night when the dead first begin to walk.
The idea of film students' perspectives graduating wouldn't make sense to have them with professional cameras in 2007 if zombies started taking over and slowing down human advancement since 1968. since by Land of the Dead, the world was already in total ruin. Hints of this rebooted universe can be heard with radio broadcasts from the original Night of the Living Dead being heard in the background, with cameo narrations from Quentin Tarantino, Wes Craven, Guillermo del Toro, Simon Pegg, and Stephen King. And it also lends to this being a reboot since no one at all in the movie knows what zombies are or how to combat them. Diary starts off the film with a news crew's camera footage as they report on an immigrant father shooting and killing his wife and son. The news crew sees firsthand the undead coming back to life, biting first responders and cops opening fire. The movie starts off incredibly weak despite seemingly a lot going on. Police resorting to shooting a slow-moving, lumbering target immediately when they don't even know what the threat is, just so we can have the movie accentuate that the zombies have to be shot in the head. While the female news personality just sits there while the zombie lumbers forward to her so she can get bit on the cheek and then die instantly. All of this was just so the cameraman can go, "This can't be happening!" It's incredibly cheesy, even by Romero standards. This looks like something I would have made in my college film projects when I was making zombie movies back then. Like, this whole opening sequence doesn't feel anything like his prior work, as if it was done by someone who just learned what zombies and directing were. Like it was written in a short time frame, and it really was, and it shows immensely. It really doesn't convey either the campy, goofy horror that he sometimes goes for, and neither does it go for the philosophical, bleak beginnings his other films created. This scene does not feel like it needed to be included. It should have just started with the compilation of found footage that comes right after. Main girl Deborah discusses how people were going around searching for and downloading videos on the internet to find the truth as to what was really going on out there, trying to see the societal chaos of the zombie outbreak. It is an interesting concept, don't get me wrong. People are scrambling to find out more about the literal dead coming back to life, and having to resort to late 2000s era internet to get answers, since mainstream news was covering it up to avoid panic, and more of it being cluttered from other sources since everyone was just starting to get used to being able to record everything in front of them so easily. It's a concept that is brought up and is a main appeal brought on by Romero when discussing the film, but I feel like it's not explored nearly as much as I would have wanted to, or as in depth as he would have wanted. From there, film students make a documentary film from the footage they got during the first 3 days. The Death of Death, going over their experiences over the first few days of the Dead Rising, starting off with film students led by their friend Jason comedically going through the pains of filming a low-budget horror film as a senior class project in a time-crunched shooting schedule for college credit. In the middle of the woods at night, their mummy monster movie is interrupted when they hear radio reports of the dead coming back to life, and Romero's opinions on society and the media come out front and center pretty early on.
Shut up, Tony. It's on the fucking news.
News is always horse shit. Always make things sound worse than they really are.
Jason leaves to go pick up his girlfriend Deborah with the jump scare of a looter saying a guy with a camera in a girl's dorm is worse than him. Kind of a weird joke. Upon arriving, they call Deborah's family, but no one answers, setting forth the goal for the movie, to get to that house. All while the intro scene is playing on her computer as Deborah narrates how no one knows the truth. Honestly, that intro scene that we saw would have been better off as just background footage that we can barely see in the computer shot here. It would have worked a lot better. And the monologues given by the narrator Deborah are a bit ham-fisted and sound like the writing is trying too hard to sound poetic and philosophical. She says stuff in a blasé, cracked voice while spewing stuff like, "You spend your time resenting your parents, building your own life, but when shit hits the fan, the only place you want to go is home." While the narration can be a bit grating, it's also on par with how college film students would talk and act when recanting themselves for a documentary trying to sound deep and philosophical. I went to UNT for radio, television, and film and saw a lot of student film projects, so I'm very conflicted on how to feel. While the movie prides itself on not being like other found footage movies, it does spend a little bit of time doing the "here is so-and-so and here's their full backstory for the camera" thing that found footage films like to do. With this being a structure manufactured found footage affair, I feel like character intros should not feel forced by character interactions, especially by the dude that's been pretty solid about writing characters organically for decades. The movie also shifts its camera style to switch between recording methods, like when someone pulls out a flip phone and starts to get the perspective of that. While I applaud the idea of shifting perspectives through other recording devices, if you actually used flip phones in the late 2000s, or hell, even smartphones that just started cropping up around that time, you would know the video quality was nowhere like this for them. I do not like when directors just put filters and crop camera footage to make it look like phones or cheap cameras. If you want your movie in the found footage style, then use the actual lesser quality recording devices. I love you, Romero, but you prided yourself on trying to make a lower budget flick, but seem to refuse to use anything but studio quality cameras. I know old habits die hard. Once you go Kodak, you don't go back. But stick to the narrative you're trying to present. They soon spot a burning police car and a charged state trooper. The sight of his burnt flesh as he runs around freaks everyone out and prompts the driver, Mary, to run down 3 zombies. Now, this edit here of the phone's perspective, I don't know if it was intentionally funny or not, but it is. Mary stops the RV and everyone just goes outside and sits down in the middle of the woods to get their bearings. After what you just saw, a burning zombie and a whole bunch of others just roaming about, why would anyone just be okay with sitting here in the middle of nowhere? Ripe with guilt, Mary attempts to game over herself, but fails, prompting the group to bring her to a hospital. Despite this being a zombie outbreak, the hospital is completely abandoned and clean, just a little clutter here and there. You would think in a location like a hospital where there are tons of sick and or dying people that there would be signs of a zombie attack. Blood, bodies, anything. Radios do detail that zombie attacks are going on everywhere else. The whole world is going to hell, but this hospital seems to be okay. Until they see a silhouette of a man that comes out from the curtains as a bloodied zombie eating a corpse with his nurse. Thankfully, they keep their bloodied messes to themselves all throughout the hospital. They only make a little bit of a mess here. There's no need to make blood anywhere else. Both of the zombies lumber forth towards the cast as both are subdued. And of course, via Romero's classic style, killing a zombie in a comedic way via a defibrillator to the head, causing the nurse's eyes to pop. Sadly, this was obviously done with CGI, and it's a disappointment to see. The practical effects for this film are really lackluster or just don't exist in the first place. What's a good example of this? The corpse that was being eaten earlier comes to life and has its innards plop out. Now, if you remember that scene in Day of the Dead where the zombie that's been dissected comes to life, that was a really brutal looking scene. The makeup was fantastic, and that was 1985. But here we are, 22 years later, and we have nearly the same kind of scenario. And now you can tell it was just a bunch of props piled on a dude, as when the organs fall off his body, you can just see a regular stomach underneath. It wasn't even kind of painted or anything else. It's just a bare belly. How do you do something worse? I know the budget was lower, but Romero has an extensive history with makeup and practical effects legends like Tom Savini and Greg Nicotero. Considering the time and budget crunch, hiring them would be harder to do, we have to admit that. Shooting the film quickly and adding effects later, you know, the whole, well, we'll fix it in post thing, doesn't seem like something Romero would do. I don't know why he forced himself into both this time constraint and his monetary constraints. Ironically though, Greg Nicotero was the surgeon zombie in that scene earlier that got shot, so it's not like he wasn't around at all to lend a hand or his opinion about the special effects and makeup. Well, the camera runs out of charge and Jason goes to hook it up to get some juice. He has a solo speech about the dead when his girlfriend comes back to point a different camera at him to rub in his face about how stupid he is being, focusing on keeping his camera going more than anything else. It's obvious though that Deborah is talking directly to the audience to preach some more.
Well, you missed it. If it didn't happen on camera, it's like it didn't happen, right?
She talks about how she was attacked and is understandably pissed at Jason for not being there for her to protect her. She starts rambling on about his obsession with filming history, and when he asked who it was that screamed earlier, she responds by doing this. She screams at the top of her lungs to make a point. You're trying to survive against a threat you apparently know nothing about, but decide, I'm having a tiff with my boyfriend, and he needs to know how I feel right now, so I'm gonna scream at the top of my lungs. And right after, she genuinely screams once she sees the eaten up corpse from earlier coming to life. And you know how she responds? She doesn't run away or get a weapon or anything. She pulls out her camera and starts filming that. You literally just had a whole monologue about how stupid it is to record everything instead of being a normal person, and then do the same thing. I guess Romero is making some kind of commentary on how everyone's a hypocrite when it comes to filming every little thing, but it comes off as just stupid for no sake at all. They shoot the reanimated buffet boy behind a curtain to save on more budget. The professor monologues about being in a war and saying that kids cannot handle what he handled, despite the one guy saying he already killed 4 people earlier. Mary turns and the professor shoots her in the head, again off screen. Seems to me like they have a grasp on how zombies work now. Let's hope this knowledge pays off.
It's a bold strategy, Cotton. Let's see if it pays off for him.
Right at the 30-minute mark of the movie, we get a recap of everything that's happened with Deborah's dry Twilight Bella narration, talking about how things won't be the same while reusing old footage. Was this intended for TV that we need a recap? Again, I know it's film students, pretentious and shit, and they want to reiterate their points, but what is going on? They're leaving the hospital when...
What the? Jesus, Gordo, look out!
The cameraman acts like he is non-canon, like he's an actual cameraman in a fictional movie, and lets a zombie bite Gordo. Zombies typically grunt and moan, but this whole group doesn't hear him as he literally walks in the middle of them. Then we get the worst looking bite effects I have ever seen in a George A. Romero movie. Dude is noticeably in pain after having flesh apparently torn out by this zombie. Now, freeze. Would you look at that wound? It's literally just blood smeared on him. There's no bite marks or anything. It's literally just a smear. Well, the nerd of the group fights this zombie 1v1, and both Jason and Deborah sit there filming as if they were actual cameramen for this movie that forgot to get out of the shot. It's extremely awkward to see unmoving people filming in the midst of the dead coming back to life. The professor, armed with a pistol now, just sits and watches while this all goes on, right after his speech about kids being unable to handle killing. The nerd monologues about the others not understanding the depth of the situation while he stabs the zombie repeatedly till finally scooping out his brain Baskin Robbins style.
It hurts. Bite. It hurts.
Yeah, I'm sure that Spirit Halloween fake blood on your arm is sure chafing. And you know, you can't say it doesn't look like a zombie bite when you have the character covering the wound the whole time and saying it hurts a lot. That's the best way to get around doing makeup. It cuts to Deborah talking about Romero's viewpoint on people being able to record freely and how people stop to look at tragedies. Again, we are being really on the nose with the theme of the film. Romero's stance on the human condition has always been a core element of his films though. Having a character directly speak on it isn't something unlike his style. Dawn of the Dead had Peter discuss how the dead flock to the mall grasping for a semblance of their dull lives. In the end of Land of the Dead, Riley says the dead are just looking for a place to go, same as us. In Day of the Dead, Dr. Logan speaks many times about the humanization of the dead and how the living are the true barbaric ones. It's common for Romero to be a bit on the nose with his themes while throwing in some comical gore. Diary of the Dead, having a narrator repeatedly spoon-feed you the ideas Romero wants to convey, just feels too abrasive for the narrative. It's like Seth MacFarlane and how he basically turned Brian Griffin into a mouthpiece for his own personal politics and ramblings. It was just a carbon copy of the writer. The same can be said for Romero with his character Deborah. We cut to Mary's burial and Gordo dead on the ground from his bite wound. They debate on if Gordo should be shot in the head, as any zombie story does, and ultimately Gordo's girlfriend shoots him when he reanimates. They then upload the footage of their friend being shot in the head to the internet to prove they are getting the actual real story, despite her saying, "I didn't realize how bad it was." You're experiencing this for yourself, and other people are uploading similar stuff. You don't realize that? Their perspectives are just kind of blending into the melting pot of everyone else's recordings. To offset this dark and monotone look at media consumption, we now bring you to this Amish guy.
Jesus Christ. Those were friendly folk.
Amish, goofy death, pointless, uses explosives. All right, a perfect character. They arrive at a farm to find Samuel, the deaf Amish guy. He throws a stick of dynamite and blows up the zombies, literally just jump cutting them out of existence. Traditionally, other Romero films would have had body parts and blood flying everywhere, but nah, just gonna have some dirt. Them being at this farm made me think this was them going back to their roots to a similar vein like Night of the Living Dead, but it's literally only a pit stop that serves no purpose except to do 3 sight gags. First, the Amish character with 100 in explosives, the laptop and camera showing a clown zombie eating a dad, and for the Amish guy that was just introduced to get bit so he can put a scythe through his own head to kill himself and the zombie behind him. The zombies were barely a threat breaking into the barn, but hey, funny death. Honestly, the Amish guy was better fleshed out than any other character in this movie. That's even with him having no spoken lines and being in it for only about less than 4 minutes. It also didn't make sense that they had an Amish guy fix their broken fuel line on their car. How would he be good at fixing a car? And wouldn't he consider something like a vehicle evil? They escape this slow-moving threat so we can have another compilation narration. Bella Swan says the death rate has increased 100-fold and says,
"There weren't enough bullets to stop them all."
I've discussed it in my why you would definitely survive a Romero zombie apocalypse, but there's no way slow-moving, dim-witted zombies like this would take over so quickly and easily. Bullets are also not the only thing that can take them down. You literally showed all throughout this film that stuff like bladed weapons can kill them, poles can kill them, defibs can kill them. There's a lot of ways to kill them besides bullets. Romero likes keeping the dead as rigor mortis-stricken Walking Dead, but doubts the capabilities of people and their capabilities of defending themselves and killing the dead. On that note, they are again stopping and scheming outside their RV to go get some gas. Why leave the RV out in the open just to strategize your next plan? Do the plan and then run outside and get the gas. Don't just sit there out in the open. Why have your characters constantly make dumb decisions when you have written so much better before? Well, the group is ambushed by some dudes and they sit there and talk for a bit before rioters shoot in the distance, causing them to all leave together. All of this happens in the span of less than a minute. It's like Romero's trying to force the characters to another point but didn't know how to get it done. They arrive at a heavily armed compound. The man asks Jason what's up with the camera. Romero inserts his ominous dialogue again.
Home movies.
Who's gonna be left to watch?
Honestly, you know what? I agree, both in terms of why do you have a camera for a dead audience in this universe, but also this camera thing really takes me out of it with people wanting to survive. Why do you care about this camera so much? Yes, I understand the point of it, but still! There is also commentary on racism, where the whole compound is primarily black individuals saying they are taking the power back from those without tans. The white woman says all the black guys are just looting, when in actuality they're trying to get supplies to survive and have shown no other inkling towards anything else. Honestly, they're doing a lot more than the main cast instead of just doing nothing and stopping every 10 miles. This whole thing felt like a meta-commentary on public opinion of people affected by Hurricane Katrina just a few years prior. A TV nearby is playing the same intro cinematic from before, yet this time George A. Romero cameos as a chief of police, saying the immigrants that were shot on camera were just violent criminals, completely denying the existence of them being reanimated corpses, and covering up what's actually going on, making yet another commentary about how mainstream media covers up the truth. don't you think it's a bit far into the movie to be making this clip, I don't know, work for the context of what's trying to be said? Yeah, the MSM lies about the realities of the world. Every person knows that. It's not opening your third eye to realize that. But choking down the cover-up plot point doesn't really go down well when you just said earlier that zombies were already filling the streets and causing the death toll to increase by 100%. If anything, sensationalizing this pandemic for views would be the main goal for MSM so they could get more of that juicy advertising revenue. Jason sneaks away from the group and starts editing the footage he has. I wish editing was as simple as how he puts it here. One clip and then another, especially with 2007 editing software. Now, to make you feel old or get a glimpse of my teenage years, Jason freaks out about his footage getting 72,000 views in 8 hours on MySpace. Do you realize how big that was for something in 2007? 72,000 views in 8 hours is insane. By today's standards, no, not really, that's just an average big channel. Honestly, I wish I could pull those numbers like I used to, but I can't. But for 2007 MySpace videos, Deborah and Jason start arguing over what's more important, survival or clout. Jason argues that this footage was the only source of truth out there since the media was lying so much. Oh, that's why they had that clip pop up so late, why they had Romero coming in talking about covering up all this. So it would be shoehorned in to give Jason a reason to want to continue recording and have a monologue so he could white knight his way into internet fame. That's what it was all about.
Would you rather have people not knowing what's going on in the world? We might even be able to save somebody's fucking life here. All over the world, people learning how to survive by seeing how we manage to survive.
Dude, all people have to do is look out their window to see zombies. How are they learning to survive from your footage, by the way? You literally let a zombie bite your friend right in front of you. You sat back and have watched people die many times. I mean, half of the kills were just people offing themselves. You're gonna teach people that? Deborah was right to disregard this crusade of exposing the truth. The truth is already right in front of us. I can't wait for Jason to die in the end, just so Deborah can reconsider Jason's viewpoint and finish his work for him when he dies. That's how predictable this shit is. Well, Deborah's brother texts her saying the house will be safe to go to. Jason Skypes his mummy friend as they are casually drinking champagne and chilling. I don't know whether Romero wanted this point in the movie to either be the beginning of a zombie outbreak where no one knows what's going on, lending to their naivety, or if the zombies are everywhere and forcing people to become survivalists. It's incredibly weird for it to be written this way, especially for somebody with zombie apocalypse writing experience for almost half a century. One of the guards in the base apparently died of a heart attack, yet suddenly he disappears. How in the everlasting plot convenience did this happen? Do you not have tons of armed guards around to look over him, or at least would have seen him? Wouldn't a zombie naturally walk around towards the sounds of people and try to eat them? Why is this particular zombie suddenly a Zombieland 2 ninja? All these questions and more will be answered off screen behind a truck. The zombie just wandered behind these vehicles. At least it saved the movie some budget and made it feel like a found footage Wait, the zombie guy survives being shot by an M16 multiple times and doesn't have any gunshot wounds? And this base of fully armed people just let him wander up to a main character and there's just this weird, slow walking standoff? While Jason films it? No one's gonna do shit here! Nope. Tony smashes a glass of hydrochloric acid on the zombie's head. The zombie only paces back and forth between people instead of getting close to anyone as its head corrodes away. Honestly, you should have cut all of this scene and stuck to the off-screen kill to cut. This whole scene was widely unnecessary and just pushed how bad the CGI was and how unthreatening your zombies are. They leave the compound and are even given guns for free. As they drive off, their phones and TVs lose their signals, indicating that the towers have all gone down. Deborah, both on camera and in narration, goes full philosophical dickhead mode, again saying shit like,
Technology is terrific, Elliot, except when it doesn't work.
and
The mainstream had vanished with all its power and money. Now it was just us, bloggers, hackers, kids.
Oh yeah, because when you point out the internet is out at the same time as TV, then of course that's the conclusion you can come to. Can't wait to read Billy from Michigan's blog post about the zombie outbreak when I don't even have internet service. Why are they obsessing over chronicling all this when a lot of the internet is going down? Why have anything make sense for a story or make a fun viewing experience when you can constantly slap a viewer in the face with philosophy? They get to Deborah's parents' house and find them missing with signs of a scuffle in a car. Trying to figure out where they went, Deb is ambushed by her zombified brother, Zombieland 2 Ninja Zombie, purely for a cheap jump scare. While she is grabbed and potentially bitten, no one attempts to save her. Even her boyfriend, who just sits there filming it like it's a zombie cuck snuff film. The professor shoots her zombie mom with an arrow and they leave. What did the entire group think was going to happen at this house? The plot of getting there is swept under the rug immediately, and Deb narrates how she is numb over footage of everyone else's deaths so far. I swear, most of this movie is her talking over reused footage. They chat in the RV until stopped by a National Guard convoy and have all their supplies from the base stolen. I thought the plot was going to be about these guards trying to find the base where the supplies came from, but no. Instead, these characters are completely forgotten about and are going to be used in the sequel to this movie, Survival of the Dead. Instead of talking about how their supplies just got stolen, we're going to have Deborah talk about how the dead are rising and you have to shoot them in the head. A point they already established many times. Why is she going over this? Anyways, they decide to go to Mummy Friend Ridley's mansion. Yes, this guy has a mansion. But before that, we see random body cam footage Jason finds on the internet that shows armored hazmat people breaking into a house looking for zombies. An old couple is hiding the zombies in their house, and when the armed dude goes snooping into one of the doorways, he gets ninja'd by a zombie and bitten in one place he did not cover up, despite being heavily armored. We should have made a movie called Silence of the Dead, with how quiet they are for plot's sake. The armed guards shoot the old people, and then the bitten dude shoots himself. Another bit of random footage that could have been easily cut, as it does not add or detract anything for the movie. It feels like just a random scene that he just slapped in because it was an idea for a different film, but it couldn't fit in anywhere else. They get to their friend's mansion and find it empty with the front door open. Roaming around, Ridley bursts out from a hidden panic room acting weird. Oh boy, a panic room with a bunch of cameras in every room of the house. I wonder where the movie will end and how more footage will come into play. Ridley says the rest of his family and staff are working on a generator while everyone gets comfortable. No one bats an eye that an entire family is nowhere to be seen, especially with the door being wide open and the only person around is locked in a panic room. Ridley admits later that everyone got bitten and he buried them in a pool, showing all the zombies of the family and staff at the bottom of the pool, alive but not able to get out of it. It honestly is a real cool visual that harkens back to Land of the Dead. Ridley walks off after talking about being hungry and collapses. Tony and Deborah both note he had blood on his arm. And I kid you not, the editing does a Criminal Minds CSI-ass flash cut to the bite wound. If y'all are so damn investigative that we have to have an edit like this, why did you notice he was bit and then say nothing? The nerd starts taking a shower while Ridley comes back from the dead. Knowing he was bit, Deborah and Tony do absolutely nothing with this information. What were they doing this whole time? The professor, still armed with a bow, hears the zombie coming back to life and just goes into the panic room without alerting anybody. And, I mean, you're armed, you can easily shoot a threat like that. Ridley walks outside to the front to attack Tracy, and she easily shoves him off. They run into the woods. Jason records all this going down without helping anyone. This whole thing is going to happen so it can come full circle to the beginning of the movie when the film students were recording their monster movie. Except this time, the mummy is a real dead person. Wow! Everybody made dumb decisions or ignored this just so we could have a callback to a fake monster now being a real monster. Tracy kills zombie Ridley by whacking it on the head with a stick. How was that enough to kill it? And oh my god, it just gets worse. Upon killing this zombie, Tracy says,
Don't mess with Texas.
and we have Dixie marching country music start playing for a full half minute. I realized this was supposed to be edited by college students, but why would college students implement this music when they're trying to reach a certain tone for the film, especially one that includes the death of many of their friends? It just feels like a gimmick that Romero inserted and forgot that this is supposed to be a dark zombie mockumentary. But you know the reason why that was included? Because she said Texas! You know, I'm a native Texan, and any mentions of Texas are usually welcome. But what the hell was this? Literally, this scene was so stupid, I could only think of this.
Hey, Patrick, what am I now?
Stupid?
No, I'm Texas.
Tracy also says to Jason she is leaving him and taking the house and all the other stuff. This line was also a really big curveball. It confused the hell out of me. It had me almost rewriting my entire script because it made me think, wait, is Tracy his girlfriend? I thought Deborah was his girlfriend. But apparently that line was there just so she could be funny and drive off with everyone's RV. Girl, I understand why you're mad at Jacob for obsessing over the camera over her safety, but pulling a Lily and stealing an RV with no supplies is stupid as hell, especially when you just arrived at a frickin' mansion you can fortify with rich people's supplies, and if a lot of zombies break in, there is a panic room that they can't even get into. Well, the nerd is finishing up his bath when, are you kidding me? Zombie Ridley walks in the room? How did he get here? Did he teleport here? Jason was literally just by this body that was lying on the ground, and to my recollection, zombies can't be knocked unconscious, at least not in Romero's interpretations. Yet Ridley gets up, ignores Jason and the rest of the mansion to go to the only unarmed and unaware person. I thought zombies were supposed to be dumb, but this one knows where he is going. Well, because of the attack, the nerd is bitten and falls in the bathtub with a hairdryer, electrocuting him and overloading the mansion's breakers. All of that so the house would be darker with no electricity. Everyone decides going into the panic room is the best option, despite only one zombie lurking around. They could have just gone to the bathroom and killed Zombie Ridley and the eventual nerd coming back to life because he died of electric shock. But nope, everyone except Jason goes into the panic room. Jason says he wants to go and record some more footage for the film. Less than a minute later, Zombie Ridley appears behind him, again like a ninja, just staring at the camera and bites Jason. There was no reason for Jason to go do this shit except be a sacrifice for the plot, and so Deborah could be the Bella Swan narrator. Nothing. Jason as a character was nothing more than a camera, something that Romero did not know how to write as a person around the idea of recording devices chronicling the zombie outbreak. Jason's bit on the throat, Deborah takes the camera. She points the camera at her dying boyfriend's head and then pops him with the gun. It's almost like they were both getting off to this, going, "Oh, we're such true journalists. Oh." It cuts to a recording of Jason he did earlier, enthusiastically talking about recording the zombie outbreak and getting the truth with no lies. Dude would have been great as a political commentary YouTuber. He sounds just like all of them. Deborah, as predicted, takes the mantle and decides she will record more footage for her boyfriend and finish the movie. Because of course she will. She was against this whole sentiment up until now, but now she's just gonna make the movie for him because he did something stupid. They shut themselves off in the panic room and then sit and edit video footage forever like true YouTubers. The movie closes out with a clip apparently Jason had downloaded off the internet. 2007 internet, mind you, despite, you know, there being no more internet service as well. And if he downloaded this video before that, a guy like Jason would not have kept this to himself or a secret. He definitely would have been showing the footage to his friends going, "Oh man, this is so messed up. We can totally use this for the movie. Yeah!" What's the footage? Well, it's just some rednecks shooting a hanging zombie and some other tied up zombies for fun, till everything but the upper half of one of the zombies' heads is left. It ends with Deborah asking if humanity is worth saving. A final quote that has nothing to do with the overall message conveyed from this movie. How people are the true monsters. Yeah, like that has not been said by, you before. If you wanted that to be the final line, maybe that should have been more of the centralized focus of the film. Instead, we get this as a cluttered message. Everyone recording things incessantly is bad, but good for telling the truth, but not completely as some people lie too. That's okay, the media lies more so, but you need to record everything everything to show what happened, but don't record at the cost of people's lives. But actually, you know what? Do record them to honor their memories. Don't record tragedies for clout, but record tragedies for historical accuracy. Every single point this movie tried to make was contradicted over and over by the preaching and the stupidity of the characters. It's also slowed down by the inconsistency of the behavior of the zombies and the CGI replacing everything that made Romero's gore so special back then in the first place was gone. Everything about Diary of the Dead was not a return to Romero's roots. It was a return to the blockbuster and asking for a refund for the time wasted watching this film. Don't get me wrong, I love Romero to death, but this was an awful sequel, and with everything said, it's no wonder no one talks about this film. It literally is just a title in his library and nothing else. Hopefully the sequel, Survival of the Dead, is better. Heads up, it's not. If you want a video on that and the plans for a posthumous movie called Twilight of the Dead that will serve as the finale to Romero's work that just started filming, let me know down below. Thank you for watching today's look at some of Romero's worst. I don't want to be a negative Nancy, and I hope to go over the beauties of movies like Day of the Dead or the awesomeness of Land of the Dead. Shout out to Quick Flicks for editing this all together. Check them out for quick recaps on your favorite movies. Thanks to my Patreon patrons and YouTube channel members for helping me get the videos along so they can be featured on this list here. If you want to be a part of it, all it takes is $1 to be permanently a part of Wow Such Gaming history. Follow the links below to do it now. Until next time, I'm Zach S, aka Wow Such Gaming. Never forget to stay happy, stay healthy, and stay wow.